Welcome back to Note to Self. This is a mental health navigators edition. We are doing a three mini episodes with myself, Randi, Shanza, and Gaby. We are part of the Student Mental Health Navigators program at Alameda College, and three of us do all go to different colleges. I go to Laney College, and I'm a journalism navigator. And Shanza, do you want to say what college you go to?
Hello everyone, my name is Shanza and I go to Ohlone College.
Hi,
And
everyone.
Gabby.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Gabby, and I am currently a mental health navigator at Ohlone College.
Okay, and then I'm just going to do a quick peer check-in and we'll have like kind of an open discussion. When you guys first started college, what general information did you know about mental health?
Honestly, I had no idea. There was mental health services available on campus, or I mean, like, you mean in general or on campus? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, on campus. Sorry, on campus. Like, what did you know if
Yeah.
there was what resources you had at Aloni, or did anybody tell you during like an orientation or anything like that?
Mhm. No, funny thing is, I didn't know there was mental health services until after my first year. So in my senior year, I learned about the ambassador program, the mental health navigator program at Devo College, which is where I was doing my undergrad um, at that time. And we're talking like 3 years ago. So I found out through a classroom presentation, I believe, or a flyer, one of the two. And I was like, oh, I didn't know there was such a thing. And then I kind of emailed Thane, who is our program coordinator for the Navigator program. And I was like, I'm interested. What is this about? And I got a little more information there.
Yeah, my experience was kind of the same. I didn't know until my second semester, and it just so happened that Danielle, who is also a navigator, and she also runs our wellness center at Laney, was in the quad tabling, and she was passing out flyers, and they had like goodie bags. And that's how I knew we had a wellness center. But then that was like I think that was my first semester. But then my second semester, I actually saw an ad for the Navigator ambassador program on Instagram, on our Laney Wellness Center Instagram. And I only followed it because I'm a journalism major and I was writing for the school paper at the time. So I kind of was following all the social media outlets as far as on campus things so I could keep up with what was going on. And then I do have like a personal connection to mental health. So I figured I could be helpful and use it as part of, write about it as part of my journalism and kind of tie it all in. Shanza, what about you?
Yeah, so I started going to Ohlone in fall 2022. Honestly, when I was going to community college, I more of just kind of went for it would be kind of like, oh, I just go for class and then I go back home. So I honestly didn't pay too much on what the mental health services really were on campus. I figured that there was a counseling department, but I didn't look too much into it. And then I found out about the Navigator program later on in my first semester because someone who was already on the team suggested that I do it because they knew that I was in psychology and I've done similar work in psychology for mental health. So it just made sense.
Sorry. I think in general, I feel like when we first start, like me personally, like I didn't really have like a quote unquote orientation, but I do think classroom presentations and things like tabling as far as getting the word out there about wellness centers on campus is very helpful, because every person that I have talked to on campus that found out about the wellness center, that's usually how they found out about it. It's not like they, started their first day and somebody was like, by the way, there's a wellness center here.
Yeah, I think, well, although I started when I first, you know, found out about the wellness center and the programs that were available for like students to do, peer-to-peer support and things like that. I was already taking some psych classes and already knew my major was psych, but I wasn't too aware of like, what really mental health was, or like the mental health programming, or any kind of like therapy per se. I kind of thought it was just like a health center where you go get vaccines and things like that. So that was one of the things that I thought it was more like programmatic as opposed to um like a wellness center, right? Like for mental health and physical. So that was one of my confusions I did want to mention.
Yeah, for me, the wellness center, I didn't know, I honestly didn't know it existed until my orientation, like my training to be a navigator, and we went to the the wellness center, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like they have like so many services. They have like a trauma room. So so I thought it was like a really good resource that I just wish that I had more knowledge about before. But the good thing is that on at least for Aloni, I'm not sure how it is for the other campuses, but for Aloni, at least on Canvas, there is a link to go to the wellness center, and I think it has all the resources too. So I think that's really helpful and a good way for more people to kind of know about this resource.
Yeah, I was gonna say also I'm like a I don't know how to describe it. I'm like an older student. I'm not very young. This is kind of like my second go round of school. I never got a degree in anything. I have gone to community college before, but I think it's also that does make a difference too, because I feel like some of the younger students may have been prepped more about the knowing about a wellness center on campus or that sort of thing. Like I don't even know, like, does anybody know if they have wellness centers in high schools now? I know when I was in high school, we did not have one. Did you guys have one?
We did. I'm gonna jump in here because I do remember there was a program that stemmed from um not Health Pack. What are those health centers for women? Why am I blanking? I forgot what they're called, but it was a program where they started having clinics on high school campuses. This is in Alameda back in the day, and I'm right there with you, Randy. I'm 38 years old currently, so I'm not a traditional student by any means. I also attended community college classes, but I do agree with you in that part where the orientations are more targeted to new students, right? So the orientations where they share all the like resources and information about the different departments, it's more, it stems more to like high school students transferring into community college. Because I know my son already did like a tour at Chabot College, and like Cal Cities Bay and like that. He was asking me or telling me like, "Hey, did you know about this?" Because I also graduated from Cal Cities Bay recently. So, like they target younger students or like a more traditional age, in like orientation style, presentations. So yeah, because we weren't traditional, we were kind of like, I just want to sign up for classes, and we just focused on that as opposed to like, hey, I want to be supported through my campus. What is available, right?
Yeah, I think this is something where I'd come in more since I am more of the like traditional student you guys are referring to. I graduated high school in 2022. Um, but honestly, okay, so at my high school, I don't remember there being a wellness center. There were definitely counselors. I remember I went to a few counselors and they were like pretty decent, I would say. As well as much as there was a wellness center, I don't remember there being one, but it could be that I just wasn't aware. Even then, I'm sure maybe in the orientations or anything, they might have mentioned it, and it might just be my fault that I don't remember hearing it because I also kind of still had that attitude of, oh, like I'm working, so and I'm not going to campus that much, so I don't always feel like campus is that big of my life, so I didn't really think too much about having that type of mental health support and really look that much into it.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like in my high school experience, that my camp, the counselor that everybody has, kind of, I think they kind of doubled as like, oh, if you need some mental health assistance, we can help you with that. But I did pull a little bit of information. So from the 2021 to 2022, I didn't find anything more recent, but the Healthy Mind Study Data Report said only 22% of students said that they know they were where to go to access resources from their schools, their colleges. From that same report, only 29% of students currently need help for emotional or mental health problems such as feeling sad, blue, anxious, or nervous. 33% of those students have been diagnosed by a health professional with depression or other mood disorders such as major depressive disorder or persistent depressive disorder. And then I just found today there was an article on that came out on came out in last year around this time, on the 23rd, March 23rd, 2023 on CNN. And then you can edit this out, but I can send the link. I don't know if we can put that in the podcast, but it says 2 out of 5 undergraduate students, including nearly half of female students, say they frequently experience emotional stress while attending college, according to a survey published by Gallup and the Lamenia Foundation, a private independent organization focused on creating accessible opportunities for post-secondary learning. The survey was conducted in fall of 2022 with responses from 12,000 adults who had a high school degree but had not yet completed an associate's or bachelor's degree. More than 40% of students currently enrolled in an undergraduate degree program had considered dropping out in the past 6 months, up from 34% in the first year of the COVID pandemic, the survey found. Most cited emotional stress and personal mental health as the reason. That was the reason far more often than financial considerations or difficulty with coursework.
Yeah, I think the need for mental health is so huge, but one issue is that a lot of people just might not be as aware of what mental health resources are out there. And this is something that I found. Um, so before I entered community college, I actually did a project. It was like a series of mental health webinars where I essentially worked with a licensed family marriage and family therapist. And what I found was that a lot of people simply didn't know where to start. Like when I had a lot of my friends who also had like a lot of mental health struggles, and I was able to get the help, but a lot of people either they were able to or they just didn't know how to. So kind of what I did with the seminars was make it kind of a guide so that people knew where to start, because a lot of times that's just not something that is well known. Some people simply don't really even have knowledge of what mental health disorders are, and they don't know that they fall into that category, or they don't know really like there's resources at school, there's resources that are affordable. So I think just bridging that gap is really important, as the studies that you've provided show.
And Shanza, I think you were going to actually take us into like mental health as a basic need. Is that right?
Yes, in the next episode.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you can edit this out. I didn't know. Okay, I was confused. I thought we were doing all 3 in one episode. So we're gonna do 2. So the next one will be about the basic needs.
Yeah, they're separate. Yeah.
Okay. Well then I didn't pull any more information because I thought we were going to be splitting it up, but I mean we can still discuss more about like, our experiences with knowing about the resources on campus. I mean, I too also, Gabby, to what you said about not knowing that thinking that the wellness center was just about like physical, like, getting a checkup or vaccinations or something, because we do have 2 separate things on campus. And I also thought that's what they meant, was just the, physical part of it, not the mental.
Yeah, something that I did notice though, specifically in like the community college setting that I've visited. So I've attended College of Alameda, Laney, and Chabot College, and Ohlone in the past. So knowing they're all so different, because I know, like you said, at Laney, it's like 2 different departments, or like they're basically in separate buildings even, right? Um, And at Ohlone, what I encountered is like one health center and they collaborate and communicate constantly because let's say someone comes in for, a health appointment and then something related to mental health comes up. And as a navigator, that's our job. Like we get referrals when students have need or, need resources outside of the campus setting. So automatically, like, Sway gets a student that needs further support or Jessica at the front desk. And they just kind of hand it over to me or they just Slack me and say, hey, the student needs this resource. Um, so I think that's always very crucial, right? Well, like when you're encountering like, okay, yeah, the services are there, but how are these services collaborating within each other? And sometimes it can get a little bit complicated when they're not even in the same building um, because it does feel like very separate. Um, One of the things that I did want to mention though, in relation to like mental health awareness, and especially in students, is the pandemic. I know it's like such a huge elephant in the room that I think it sparked so much need, um, specifically because students were, forced to stay home and being isolated. So that sparked a lot of anxiety and depression. Um, and I did want to mention that I was doing a little bit of research when it came to post-pandemic, because I think that's something that stuck with me as well. That the Lancet Regional Health, um, there was a study, sorry, in the Lancet Regional Health, and it showed that depressive and anxiety symptoms jumped from 27.8% in 2020 to 32.8% in 2021. And when we're looking at students between the ages of 14 and 25, I believe, they noticed that 37% were reporting mental health, like, suffering within that first year. But by the second year, 44% said that within the last month, they started feeling helpless or hopeless or feeling more anxious. So to me, that's huge, right? Like we're looking at 44% out of that population of teens that were in that survey. Um, and the reason why I bring it up, it's because for me, I noticed a huge change within my three children, right? I have a 15-year-old currently, and at that time, he was in that borderline preteen teen age, and he was constantly asking to like just get out of the system that he was feeling and like, can we just leave the house for a walk? Can I just turn off the TV? Or every little thing started becoming more irritable. So starting to see those signs within my own household kind of sparked more curiosity. Um, and I think that was one of the huge um, tipping points, not only for like funding that started coming in for wellness, for mental health into institutions, it's more of, noticing that there is a huge change in our society and the way we engage with each other and being forced to isolation or into isolation, during the pandemic. It just completely took a mental toll for everybody. Um, and it definitely sparked a lot of need.
And I was gonna say, so I live by myself. I don't have like a roommate or kids or anything. So when during the pandemic, I was like literally all alone, and I feel like that really had an impact on my mental health because they were like, you can't see your family that doesn't live with you or friends or that sort of thing. I mean, we did, how everybody was doing like Zoom parties and that sort of
Yeah.
thing, but it just like wasn't the same. And I feel like it really did have an impact on like even the way I socialize now is so different than
Yeah.
before the pandemic. It's like I find myself 9 times out of 10 not wanting to go anywhere because I feel like now we're conditioned to be able to do everything at home.
I agree. I agree. And I think something actually right now that you're saying that feel free to chime in anytime, Shanza, but I am like for me being at home, like you said, although I live with three kids and a husband, I am completely isolated because I was the only one that was kind of like, okay, if I'm gonna go to the store and get groceries, I have to go by myself. Like I'm not gonna expose the kids. If I'm gonna go um, to do anything outside of the house, I had to do it by myself. And then within the house, I had to keep the kids busy doing something, but I didn't really feel like I took care of myself. I didn't feel like I wasn't doing much other than schoolwork for my classes over Zoom or like work meetings over Zoom. Everything was pretty much like um, in that sense. And if you are all familiar with, Zoom meetings and Zoom anything, you can't force people to turn their camera on. So even if you are engaging or you feel like you're getting some socialization, it's kind of hard to force anyone to, just see a face like, hey, let me see what you look like.
Yeah, I
But yeah.
really agree that COVID, I'm glad that you brought up COVID because I think it is a huge, huge, huge factor into how everything changed. So for me personally, I didn't really have much like struggle. I'm gonna be honest, like I don't really think I had much struggles with mental illness before that. Like I probably had some anxiety and stuff. And since I was a minor at that time, right? So I needed my parents' like approval if I wanted any therapy or anything like that. And I remember like bringing it up to my parents before, like, oh, I think I have anxiety. They honestly thought I was just making it up. But then once the pandemic hit and they saw like how I was reacting, they kind of realized like, oh, she's serious. And they actually started setting me up to attend therapy and get that in motion. So I do agree that the pandemic really did increase mental health awareness. Like I would hear a lot of people actually talking about mental health a lot more during the pandemic, which I do appreciate. Um, it is true that mental health issues definitely did worsen over the pandemic. It's definitely because of isolation, and some people were like trapped in their house, and um that could be bad for many reasons. Like maybe people aren't being able to see their friends, or they're in a toxic house to begin with, so then it becomes hard. And also one statistic is that the World Health Organization found that anxiety and depression prevalence increased by 25% globally. So it definitely shows that the effects of the pandemic were pretty big on the field of mental health. And another thing too is that the American Heart Association um, found that they kind of warned, I guess, that long COVID can have devastating effects on the mental health of those who experience it, as well as their families. And this could be from the illness itself, the social isolation, financial insecurity, caregiver burnout. Gabby was kind of mentioning something about being a caregiver, and I think that's something that I also dealt with at that time because my sister was just born at that time, and since we had a pretty big age gap, I did feel that at some points that I had to do a lot of caregiving, and that did take a toll on my mental health. It would be a lot of like I was in a position where it was kind of a lot of toxic product productivity. Like it was like, okay, do your school, take care of the kids. It was almost like self-sacrificing. Like there was no like I didn't find time to do much for myself, or I would feel even when I did, I'd feel so guilty when I finally did something for myself, or I even had a chance to relax because I would push myself so much just for like academics too, and it was like a huge problem. And because like also part of it was that social interaction was limited. So because of that, I wasn't used to having that in my life anymore, and it just felt like everything should be isolated. Everything should just be, I guess, in the hustle culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So
think to kind of tie it back into like, as far as being aware of mental health services on campus, I feel like as a whole that the campuses probably could have done a better job as we were returning from COVID to, whether new students or returning students
mhm.
to campus. Um, Maybe there could have been more outreach around that time because getting people adjusted to, like we all just talked about our three different experiences during COVID. So it's like coming back to campus was a big adjustment for a lot of people. So I feel like we could have done, maybe more could have been done around getting everybody kind of feeling better about being there and helping with their mental health coming off of a pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because um what I felt like when we were on Zoom and school, I was doing high school over Zoom. It would just feel like there was such a huge disconnect between professors and students. They didn't have really a way to know like what we were going through because we're all online. And there were some teachers who would be very supportive. They'd be like, "Oh, reach out to me if you need any help," or they'd give some suggestions. Like I remember the huge suggestion I would always hear would be like to take a walk. So there was definitely some attempted support, but I think it was a challenge for everyone, and I think part of the barrier that came in just giving that awareness is was that just the pandemic being there was hold on, I'm so sorry. I'm like losing my train of thought right now. Give me a second.
Yeah. So kind of going into the awareness aspect of things, um, because that's what kind of sparked in my head thinking about, how students or what kind of knowledge students have about mental health, or mental illnesses. Sometimes psych majors, take basic classes on behavior, on, like abnormal psychology, you learn about disorders and things like that. Um, but just being on campus and, engaging through that pandemic was very difficult. I remember that, my job as an ambassador at that time was and this was, I'm not going to say post-pandemic, but I was able to be on campus on 2021. And we were doing tabling events. And I remember I would do table events to like bring awareness, right? And talk about like how students have access to six mental health sessions with a therapist on campus and things like that. And students were like, what? I didn't know about this. So I would hand out flyers. And I noticed that a lot of the time because classes were barely starting to come back in person, there was no traffic. And then I realized that, sometimes they would have food pantries or they would offer, like emergency food for students. Well, not emergency, but they would hand out free lunches on Thursdays. So I actually started going on Thursdays. And then they added an extra day. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, they were giving out free food in the lunchroom. So I started going to the lunchroom to just give presentations or start talking to students, hand out flyers, and just ask them questions like, "Hey, did you know that you have a certain amount of sessions per semester?" I think it was six um, at the time, and the students were like, "Oh no, I didn't know." So I think awareness has to do a big part on how campuses are targeting students to know about their services. So having like wellness ambassadors is very important, or just student workers that actually connect with their peers. So that's one of the things that I know if I would have had that kind of support back when I started college, like 18 years ago, I probably wouldn't have stopped going to college because I would have felt more like part of the community, like getting support, not just with classes with a regular counselor, but getting mental health support or anything like that. I think that would have helped me out a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so what I was gonna say is that a barrier to that awareness of mental health after the pandemic was simply just because there was so much transitioning. We're transitioning to online, we're transitioning back into person. And when we did transition into person, as Gabby was saying, like a lot of people still weren't coming in person. A lot of us got used to being on Zoom and, taking our classes asynchronously, whatever it is. So then it becomes harder to give that kind of support, that kind of knowledge when it's like that because a lot of people just have the attitude then of just getting their classes done, of getting whatever they need to get done without really thinking too much about finding these mental health resources or engaging in these mental health resources or really even just having the opportunity to find out about them. It becomes more limited when we're shifting back, basically.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I feel like classroom presentations are very important. I know every time we've done a classroom presentation, we ask that question. We always like, how many of you knew there was a wellness center on campus? And, barely anybody knows. And then we'd ask, follow up with, well, did you know, like, did you know it was a mental health wellness center? Because the majority of the people that said they knew assumed it was like, you know, the clinic. And we're like, well, no, there's actually one for mental health that's completely separate. So then like half of those people are like, oh, didn't know that. So I feel like the classroom presentations are really important for that, because it's like you got everyone's attention for however long, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, what have you, but at least they're getting the information.
Yeah, and something that I did want to go back to, like Shanza mentioned, that some professors would take more time to like connect with you and ask, you know, if you need more support, if you need to talk to someone. Um, I never had that experience, but I know some professors that did that with the whole classroom. And I felt a little bit more comfortable. Like if I was having a bad mental health day that I didn't want to like show up to class and I was feeling down on myself, that I could, you know, I had the ability to email that professor and say, hey, can I take a mental health day? Um, or ask for extensions. Or I think that also allowed for professors to be more, not lenient, but more empathic, or, you know, empathetic towards people's situations, which I think is good, especially for working students, um, and, you know, work and student parents and things like that. But yeah, for sure, I think mental health education, um, is crucial to like, you know, just raise awareness, and educate students. I know there is some national organizations that, you know, I'm aware of, like Active Minds. I was part of their student advisory committee, and they actually started having, or they started promoting, clubs for, you know, Active Minds on campuses for colleges, and now they're doing high schools as well. So I think the earlier they start educating students for, you know, taking care of their mental health and how they can find tools or just have access to that knowledge, and those mentors on campus that can help out a lot of students, right? Not feel isolated or feel like they don't have support.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I have actually one of my classes I'm in right now. I have a professor who she did do like a whole survey of like, you know, if you have, it's just between myself and her, if you have any like mental health conditions that you're comfortable sharing with me, please let me know. And I thought that was very cool and helpful. Like you said, it made me feel more comfortable in the class.
Yeah, I remember when I was when the pandemic first happened. Like this is like 2020. I don't remember the month. Maybe around April or something. One of my teachers, at the time, she would have these like weekly surveys where she would do like a check-in. And she was really the only teacher that I had who would do that. So I felt super supported. And I really appreciated that she took all that time, and she would send us like she'll send us like emails talking about her life so that we'd feel connected. So it was really nice to see that extra step. And then I've noticed now, like even though I take a lot of my classes asynchronously, I notice a lot of times in the syllabus that my teachers do, or like those class walk-ins, they will show the wellness center button, and they're like, oh, you can point here. So I really like that even asynchronously teachers are making an effort, professors are making an effort to um, make students more aware.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I found this one this one journal of mental health and clinical psychology. There was a discussion that but 1/3 of students that already have psychological disorders receive mental health treatment. So if you imagine three students and only one gets treatment, um, and it all has to do with stigma, right? So going back to the health education aspect of things, it's like if there's no education or awareness for students, it's not that besides not having knowledge of the resources on campus, it can affect them even more if there's, that stigma, like there is nowhere to go to, there's no one to talk to about these topics. There's no peer-to-peer support. It can be even worse, I think.
Yeah, and the stigma, a lot of it is historical. Like, um, there's a lot of these abnormal behaviors or these mental illnesses formerly were associated with things like demon possession and all that kind of stuff. So really, it was not seen as something that just a lot of people had or what could be seen as normal. It was seen as something that like needs to like be taken out of you. So I think that really does have an effect on how mental health is viewed today. And this is something that happened in a lot of cultures and and even now I think we're still seeing similar things. It might not be the same dialogue or it might not be the same reason, but in a lot of cultures it's something like the attitude will be, "Oh, talk like, we don't wanna talk to a stranger about our problems," or, "Oh, it makes us look weak that we're doing this," and a lot of times, communities that actually do have this attitude of it looking weak are the, communities that, like, suffer from these mental illnesses the most. They're kind of used to this resilience where they find it as a weakness to be reaching out to a mental health professional or going to therapy or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we can probably start, let's wrap up and maybe we can all share one tip that we think will help promote mental health as far as like on our campuses and, just as far as campuses all over the place or whatever high school, college, whatever you feel may be the best. I can start. I think my tip would probably be have a you know a if the wellness center has the capacity to have just an orientation for everyone if possible, whether they're a high school student or a non-traditional student, just maybe a requirement actually in every class that they have today, because I know our process is you if you want a classroom presentation, the professor has to request it. So I'm recommending maybe that it's mandatory that each class has to have a wellness center classroom presentation. It doesn't have to be the full presentation that we usually do because it's usually about 15, 20 minutes, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes to just come in, show some slides of where we're at, what we do, and pass out a couple of flyers.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great point. Like it is optional, right? So professors are not well, if it's not a priority and it's not mandatory, it's really just, sign up as you feel fit. Um, but yeah, I think I agree with that. And one of my tips would be for campuses to do more events around Mental Health Awareness Week, which is usually the first week of October or the second week, if I'm not mistaken. I know this year it's between October 6th and October 12th. Um, but doing I know there's Suicide Prevention Week, but there's also like Mental Health Awareness Week where you can do like a walk on campus or you can, hand out flyers and like do something special to like make others feel, like they belong on campus. I know one of the things we also did when we were ambassadors at Chabot was they handed out lollipops with a special message, like, you belong, or we're here for you. And on the back, it had the phone number to the wellness center. So I think that's something good to keep in mind is keeping track of, awareness week and promotion.
My suggestion is to have almost like visiting days. So it'd be similar to what we did when we were doing our training to be navigators and ambassadors. I remember that they took us around the whole wellness center and they gave us an overview of services, both physical and mental. So I think that would be a really good way. They just have like a few days, maybe a few days a month or something where they take students through a similar walkthrough of everything. I think that would be really helpful to increase the knowledge around it.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Or even, just a tour. Like I said, maybe make it mandatory that each professor has to have a classroom presentation, or we could do the opposite, maybe mandatory that each class has to take a tour of the wellness center. I don't know. I know some people may have needs where they can't do so. So either way, or maybe just actually a video, like a video showing how to get there and what we do would be awesome. But yeah, so I think that was a good discussion. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys.
Thank you.